Hitler didn't want to exterminate the Jews at the time. He wanted to expel the Jews. And Haj Amin al-Husseini went to Hitler and said, if you expel them, they'll all come here. So what should I do with them? He asked. He said, burn them.
About 10 years ago, I went to a place called Auschwitz in Poland. It's a place where terrible things happened during World War II. I saw it for myself, and it was very powerful. While I was there, a lady named Sarah joined our tour. She had been a little girl when she was kept prisoner in Auschwitz during the war. Sarah showed us the exact room where she had to sleep when she was there. Being in that room, I suddenly understood something very important. The Holocaust wasn't just a story in books or movies. It was a real, awful thing that happened to real people. The Holocaust was when the Nazis, led by a man named Adolf Hitler, killed millions of Jewish people on purpose. They wanted to wipe out the Jewish population in Europe. It's estimated that about 1 out of every 3 Jewish people in Europe at that time died because of the Holocaust. Seeing Auschwitz in person made me realize just how horrible the Holocaust was. It's really hard to understand how a government could do something so cruel and kill so many people just because of their religion and where they came from. It was such an unbelievably terrible and dark event that sometimes it can feel too sad and disturbing to even think about in full detail. But we have to remember and learn from what happened. One big question I had was, why did Hitler hate Jewish people so much? Near the end of World War II, Hitler had to make a tough choice. He could send trains full of people to the army fighting the war. Or he could send those trains to the prisoner camps to imprison more Jewish people instead. Shockingly, Hitler chose to send the trains to the prisoner camps. He thought getting rid of Jewish people was even more important than winning the war. In his last speech, Hitler told the German people, remember to follow the laws against Jewish people. He also said the war wasn't really against countries like England or America. He said, the real war is between us Germans and the Jewish people. So why was Hitler so obsessed with hurting and getting rid of Jewish people? That's the big question I kept asking myself. So why did Hitler hate Jewish people so much? The answer can be found in his own writings and speeches. In his book, Mein Kampf, and Other Conversations, Hitler clearly explained his evil way of thinking. He believed that there should be a master race of people who were considered the strongest and most superior. He thought this Aryan master race should rule over everyone else. Hitler's worldview was like a harsh jungle law. He thought the strong, superior people should thrive and dominate, while the weak and imperfect people should be crushed and get rid of. He saw anyone who was disabled or different as imperfect and a flaw in the human race. That's why Hitler didn't just hate Jewish people, but also wanted to get rid of anyone with disabilities or who he thought didn't contribute enough to society. In his racist mind, they were all too weak to be allowed. So if Hitler thought Jewish people were weak, why did he really want them gone so badly? Well, according to Hitler's own words, he didn't actually see Jewish people as just physically weak. Instead, Hitler said Jewish people had inflicted 2 big wounds on humanity: circumcision on the body and conscience on the soul. What did he mean by that? Hitler believed Jewish people invented ideas like having a conscience, being morally accountable, caring for the weak and poor, and loving your neighbor as yourself. Basically, treating all people with equality and compassion. To Hitler, these ideas of universal morality and human rights were the biggest threat. His evil worldview was that only the strongest people should dominate over the weak. But Jewish values went against that. That's also why Hitler opposed not just Judaism, but any religion or philosophy that valued taking care of all humans equally, like Christianity or Marxism. He saw all of those as originating from Jewish thinkers. So in Hitler's mind, by promoting ideas of human rights and human equality, Jewish people were infecting society against his racist beliefs of survival of the fittest. That's ultimately what he was fighting against. When I was in the small, crowded rooms where Sarah and many others were kept locked up, Hitler's mean and twisted way of thinking felt even more scary real. The big piles of people's things and the rusty brown stains on the walls. These weren't just boring facts from a book anymore. They showed how real people went through unspeakable meanness and hurt just because of their religion and who they were. Looking at the sad old things left behind, it was hard to understand how so much hatred and cruelty was allowed to grow so big across a whole country. How could Hitler's terrible beliefs about one group being better than others have seemed okay to so many people? But the huge scale of bad things that happened at Auschwitz showed just how dangerous those poisonous beliefs were if left unchallenged. Walking on the train tracks that brought poor victims right to the camp's nightmarish gates, I could almost hear the cries of pain echoing through time. Hitler's made-up idea of a master race rang out loudly and hurt my heart. In his sick mind, the people he hurt were a threat to his fantasies about his group being better, a stain that had to be brutally erased. With each step through the burning reminders of the Holocaust, Hitler's gross hatred of Jewish people became less like a confusing idea and more like a visceral, in-your-face horror. The Jewish values of having a conscience and believing all humans deserve rights, the very principles society is built on, Hitler fiercely fought against those. Rejecting basic human goodness enabled mankind's fall into ugliness and evil on a massive scale. Hitler wanted to get rid of all the Jewish people because they believed in being kind to others and caring for those who are weak or struggling. The Jewish people teach that it is important to help people who are having a hard time or cannot take care of themselves. And this is what the Jewish religion, Torah, and beliefs are all about, that it is a good thing to be caring and helpful to others in need. Hitler did not like that idea at all. He wanted to be very cruel to those who are weak and cannot survive on their own. The Jewish people teach that it is good to be kind and caring, and that is what their religion tells them to do. This part is explaining that the Jewish belief in being caring and helping others is what their religion instructs them to do. I have broken it down so it is easier to understand what this belief is about. Hitler and the Nazis are gone now, but the Jewish people are still here even after going through so much suffering and harm. When the speaker went to the Auschwitz camp, he saw how huge it was and thought, wow, the Nazis were so determined to get rid of all the Jewish people. They put in so much planning and work, using technology and the government just to do evil things. But one wise rabbi said something very important. He said if one person can kill millions, then one person can also save millions of lives. This means we all have power that can be used for good or bad. The Nazis chose to abuse their power and do bad things. But we can choose to use that same power to do good in the world instead. The best way to honor all the people killed by the Nazis is to keep spreading the message of kindness and caring for others that Hitler hated so much. To use our power and strength to make the world a better, more caring place full of light.